I think most of us would say, like, if we have faced a fear or taken a risk for God and with God, oftentimes what you thought would be your greatest fear turn out to be your greatest failure. When you go through it with God, it turns out to be the greatest blessing of your life, right? And I didn't want to walk through what I went through. I was afraid to launch Safe Passage. And now I've got teenagers calling me on the phone these are kids who've been trafficked and exploited and groomed. And now they're calling me on my phone. 6 years ago, if you would have told me you're going to have children all over the state calling you, wanting to talk to you, wanting to tell you what they're going through, they want to talk about Jesus, and they want to leave the situation they're in, I probably would have picked my feet up a little faster. But none of that would have happened if I bowed to fear. And I just want people to examine their lives and ask themselves, what is not going to take place in the earth? What assignment has God given me that's going to sit idle and collect dust if I bow to fear? Because when God gives us an assignment, people are attached to that assignment and souls are attached to that assignment, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to say yes, because it's not just about us. It's about what God wants to do in the earth. And fear comes to tell you God doesn't need you. God's going to fail you. You're not going to make it.
He'll find someone better.
Please.
Yeah.
So, and I'll tell you,
please.
I think I said, I'll be your vessel in the earth if you want. And I really didn't want him to answer that prayer. I didn't want to be used,
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. I was thinking about fear and realizing we typically come across two primary categories of fear. Okay. The fear we often think about is actually pretty easy to face and move on from. And that's the fears that surprise us in life circumstances. And so these are things that are like external, a car slams on their brakes, in front of you and you freak out for a moment, and that fear, it comes and it goes and it's reactionary. It's reactionary. But it doesn't have a root in us, okay? Mm-hmm. The fear we're kind of talking about today, it comes from an internal place, and it's a fear we actually choose to carry over the course of time. And so this type of fear comes up when we're faced with an opportunity or assignment or a calling in life, right? And we don't believe we can do it, and we choose to be in perpetual fear about it. And this type of fear is recurring. It's recurring because it comes from somewhere rooted inside of us, okay? And it usually is rooted in the feeling that God's going to fail us or something's going to fall apart, and we better protect ourselves and not do that thing, okay? And I began to look at my life over the last 10 years, okay? And I asked myself, where would I be without risk? And the reality is, if I didn't take any of the risks I ever took, I was pretty unhappy when I took those risks, okay? But if I never took those risks, it would be now that I would be unhappy, because I would be in something that wasn't serving my purpose, wasn't serving my calling. I'd actually be in a low-level job, serving someone else's dream, taking no risks of my own, serving everybody else's risks. And every time I took a risk for God, with God, I saw a miracle. And I cannot tell you all the incredible, marvelous things God has done in my life. I try to count it up. I try to track it all down. And I become like overwhelmed when I reflect on what God has done. And so risk, what people need to know is risk is actually an invitation to see God's hand move in your life. But fear puts you in a standstill where you won't see nothing because you stayed at home and you hid. And the reason we listen to fear is because it's a loud talker. All it does is talk over you. It never runs out of talking points. They're all compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But faith has one talking point, and it says just trust God. That's all you need. Just trust God. But fear comes with 100 freaking excuses, okay? Conspiracies, worst case scenarios, rare side effects, right? And it never runs out of things to say. And so when I wanted to overcome my fears, I thought the sensible thing to do was to chase down the rabbit hole to see if I could prevent it, debunk it, avoid it, outsmart it. And that was so stupid. Because every time you get to the end of a fear rabbit hole, the rabbit hole opens back up.
It's like a fear whack-a-mole, where it's like you hit one and another one pops up. Always 10 out of 10 times.
It is. It never ends. All fear does is it water hoses you over and over again with more things to be worried about. And so when I realized I'm never, fear is never going to run out, I finally asked myself one question that settled everything and every decision I will ever make for the rest of my life. And here is that question. I asked myself, I said, if I had no fear, what would I do? And I began to realize if I had no fear, then nothing would scare me and no worst case scenario could stop me from taking that leap of faith, right? And I want to ask people, what would you do if you had no fear? Would you launch that business? Okay. Would you take that chance? Would you take the leap and become a parent? Would you move cities? Would you start that YouTube channel? If you had no fear, what would you do? Because when you ask yourself that question, you begin to realize, I actually really want that thing, standing on the other side of fear. And then you realize what the assignment of fear is. It's to block you from your assignments.